Hello Create Schools. Today we're going to take a look at the third video in our Chapter 3 Hitler chapter, Why Did International Relationships Break Down? And we're going to look at Hitler Goes Against the Treaty. So go ahead and get out a piece of paper and a pen and write the title down. We've already looked at what the terms were and what his policies were, and we already have looked at how if things got set up, and now we're going to see the step-by-step things he did to actually break the treaty. So I'll go ahead and go on to the next paper or page. Okay, the first thing he did was rearmed and he started conscription in 1935. Now, conscription is the mandatory having to be in the army. So if many of you know, in Germany, up till actually a few years ago, it was required when you were done with your schooling to join the military. Then later you had to either do military or social service, and then now you don't have to do anything after your schooling. But that has only stopped within the last, I can't even remember, 5-10 years. It's been longer than our school's been open, and we've been open for 6 years, but it hasn't been that long. So basically, before the before the disarmament conference, Hitler started rearming in secret. But then after the disarmament conference, he just basically didn't care. He wasn't part of the League of Nations anyway, and he doubled his spending in the army between in 1934, and then, like I say, in 1935, he reintroduced the conscription. In 1935, there was a massive military rally celebrating Germany. So here's pictures of the military rally right here. This rally really helped boost the Nazi support. It was really getting Germans excited to be German again. Everyone was really happy. The German army was built up to 1 million soldiers in 35 different divisions. And here is some swearing in for the Nazis in the military. Okay, go ahead and take these notes, and when you're ready, come on to the next slide with me. Okay, so this is one of those leveled answers that I was telling you about in the second video. You may either go ahead and take a screenshot and read this on your own, or you can take a look at my slides. And again, it has the describe, the explain, and the assess levels. Also some facts up there. So just wanted to show you this. Again, you do not need to write this down, just know that it's here. Okay, the next thing is the Anglo-German Naval Treaty in 1935. And if you remember in the first video, I was talking about how the British people, in the beginning of the 1920s, after the Treaty of Versailles was just made, people thought it was a good and it was a harsh treaty, but it's exactly what Germany needs. And then later they start wondering, we think this is, not right. Germany should be treated better. They were part of the League of Nations. We want to trade with them. And so they agreed on this treaty, and it allowed the Germans to have a navy up to 35% of the British fleet. And they could also have the same number of submarines in Britain. Yeah. So basically, I've kind of talked about all of those topics, so just go ahead and stop and then write them down. As you can see, that looks like he's got a cat in his hand, but it's actually a muffler just to keep their hands warm. And here is one of the first British Navy ships that came back. Okay, we'll go to the next slide when you're ready. Okay, the occupation of the Rhineland. Now remember, the Rhineland was the demilitarized area. So here we've got a picture of where the Rhineland is. Okay, here we've got Austria. Here we've got the Sudetenland, which we'll be speaking of later. Here's our Polish corridor with Danzig. And the Saar, by here, the Saar was already part of Germany by this time because they had won the plebiscite. And so Hitler decided he was going to rearm the demilitarized area, put some soldiers back in there. And the League of Nations was busy with Mussolini at the time in Abyssinia. And also you have to remember that at this time they were suffering from the Great Depression, or the effects of the Depression, and a lot of people were really poor. And so neither Britain or France was very strong, and so Hitler decided he was going to take this risk and send people into the Treaty of Versailles. And this is a very, very clear break of the Treaty of Versailles. So the German army at that time was not very big. It only had 22,000 men that he sent in. And he said, you guys be very, very careful. If there is any reaction whatsoever, pull out. If you see the French, pull out. Just be very careful. And so they carefully go back in. Nothing happens. So they decided, okay, we can be here. And so then Hitler had rearmed the Rhineland. Okay, pause here and you can take these notes. And we'll move on to the next slide. Okay, here's another example of the leveled answers that you can take a look about the Rhineland and read through on your own. You can either stop the picture, stop the video. If you stop the video, you could take a screenshot of it, or you can get it from my slides. And I'll move on to the next slide. Okay, here's something else I thought would be very nice. This also is something you do not need to write down. Basically, it's an example of a 4-point question. Why did Hitler rearm the Rhineland? And those are some examples that you could use in order to answer that question. So go ahead and just read through those on your own. And if something there helps you or triggers you, go ahead and just add them to the bottom of your Rhineland notes. Okay, pause the video. When you're ready, we'll move on. Okay, the Spanish Civil War. This is very interesting because people kind of think, Spanish Civil War, what does this have to do with Germany? And then I start talking about Mussolini from Italy, and you're thinking, okay, it's the Spanish Civil War. Why are we talking about Germany and Italy? And basically, General Franco had led a rebellion against the Spanish government, and Franco was very much in the same mind of Mussolini and Hitler. He was a fascist person and wanted to basically take over Italy. And so Hitler thought, I can go ahead and join and help Franco. And that will do a couple things. One, it would strengthen his bond with Mussolini because Mussolini is also going in and helping. And then maybe Franco would also join them. And then they'd have 3 strong countries working together and establishing a truce, or not a truce, an alliance between them. But also, Hitler was creating new weapons, Luftwaffe, and he was creating a blitzkrieg tactic. So all of you people that are really excited into military history, you guys can go and look up more and get more details. But the very, very short of it is Luftwaffe is basically dropping heavy amounts, carpet bombing, of stuff, and then a blitzkrieg is basically taking tons and tons of soldiers, tanks, everything you can possibly get it, and totally bombing a specific area. And so that is basically what Hitler did. So he said, okay, I can try out this Luftwaffe and this blitzkrieg. I can become better friends with Mussolini. Mussolini had previously stopped him from doing some things, such as an Anschluss with Austria. So Mussolini was the big one that really said, no, you can't do that, because remember, Mussolini was part of the League of Nations at this time as well. So the Condor Legion, that is the big group of military people that came in and did the Blitzkrieg. So that you don't have to write that one down if you don't wish to, but if you are a person that likes military stuff, the Condor Legion is a really good thing to be able to say when you talk about the Blitzkrieg. So pause here, write these down. So one of my favorite exam questions that have come up in an actual exam, one of the first years I was teaching, is describe what happened in Guernica in April 1937. And my students came out and they're like, Miss Jenkins, what is Guernica? I'm like, I don't know what Guernica is. I looked it up and I thought, Guernica, it's a Spanish city. And they're like, oh. So ever since then, I make sure that every one of my students knows that Guernica is a city in Spain, and it was actually where Hitler did a lot of his bombing. So everything that you know about the Spanish Civil War, if they ask about Guernica, you can say that. Well, Okay, so everything you know about the Blitzkrieg and the Luftwaffe, you can say about it. It doesn't really say much about Mussolini here. But you can go ahead and read through these answers on your own. And if there's anything in here that will help you understand Guernica better, go ahead and write it down. Okay, pause the video here to do that, and then I'll move on to the next one. Okay, the annexation of Austria in 1938. This is one of my favorite things right here. This is the voting ballot of whether or not, so they've used these ballots a couple times. One is the voting for the annexation of Austria, another one is to just vote for other things, but it's very clear that the ja is what your answer should be, not the nein. And the circle's so big so that if you're not really paying attention, they could just say, okay, just do the big circle, and they do ja. And they can also see from really far away of whether you're answering ja or nein, so that kind of gives a little pressure to make sure you vote right. But before we get there, I want to tell you a little bit about the annexation of Austria. So as I'd said before, Hitler was definitely Austrian born, and he really did want to see Germany and Austria unite as one country. Okay, then we've got the Australian Chancellor. His name is Schuschnigg. Okay, and he appoints a Nazi guy as the Australian Minister of Interior. Okay, so he's actually convinced by Hitler to do that. He's like, makes him do it. And this guy, and I don't even try to say his name because it's really hard. CS Inquart, so you can just look at it. Whoops, I'm sorry. His name is not quite as important as Schuschnigg's, so if you need to have memorize a name, go ahead and memorize Schuschnigg, and then don't even worry about the other guy's name. Just say that he was a Nazi. And so he did a lot to try to convince the the Austrian people that the Nazis were good, and that everyone should be part of the Nazi party. And so Hitler said, okay, well, the plebiscite and the Tsar worked so well, let's have a plebiscite here. And if you remember, a plebiscite is a vote from the plebs, a vote from the people. And so, but Hitler was, kind of worried that the Austrian people wouldn't want to get together with Germany, want to reunify with them. So he'd moved troops into the border, and he threatened Schuschnigg if he didn't resign. So he told him, you better resign or else. And so with all of those pressure, with all of the Prime Minister of the Interior being appointed, the Nazi being appointed, with all of these pressures, with the voting ballot that was kind of rigged, it turned out of all the people that voted, 99% of them voted for the Anschluss. But like I said, the election was totally not free. But there was lots of pressure. And then so Austria became a province of the new German Reich. Okay? So that is a clear break of the Treaty of Versailles. So you wonder, okay, this is crazy. Germany's rearming, and Britain and France do not say anything. Germany moves into the Rhineland, and Britain and France don't say anything. Germany has Anschluss with Austria, and Britain and France don't say anything about it. What happens? Now, the Spanish Civil War is not a breach of the Treaty of Versailles, but still. So anyway, if you don't have these notes down yet, go ahead and pause the video right here and copy them down, and we'll move on to the next slide. Actually, this is your last slide of notes. The next slide is just another one of those tips. So I'll move forward to that. Okay, this again, your helpful exam tip with your level grades C, B, and A. Go ahead and copy those down. Or no, excuse me, do not copy those down. You may take a photograph or a screenshot or something, or just remember that's there in order to help you understand again how to get the best results. Okay, if you have any questions about that, please let me know, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. Bye.